Welcome everyone to the Things Around 8. In this video we will talk about the new $6 billion arms package for Ukraine announced by the Pentagon. But what is the United States truly looking for in all this? And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, sign up now and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any news. This Friday, April 26th, United States Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin announced a $6 billion package destined for Ukraine, the largest amount ever provided in one go so far. But unlike most other military aid packages, made up of predefined lists and defense products, the package announced last Friday is, in fact, a kind of direct line of credit with North American companies, American defense. In other words, basically, it was as if Ukraine had received a credit card with a limit of $6 billion to be spent on purchasing defense items. According to Secretary Austin, the objective is to offer Ukraine immediate access to the weapons and ammunition it needs most at this time, with emphasis on anti-aircraft defense missiles such as the Patriot and 155mm artillery ammunition for Western howitzers supplied in the past. It was the second direct military aid package offered by the United States since the approval by Congress and the Senate of the $60.8 billion package, which also includes humanitarian and financial aid for the functioning of the Ukrainian government. With this new package of $6 billion, the value of all weapons and ammunition supplied only by the United States to reinforce Ukrainian defense will rise to $24.9 billion. A value that promises to increase by several billion over the coming weeks and months. According to General Charles K. Brown, Jr., Chief of the United States Joint Chiefs of Staff, with this package, Ukraine will no longer need to ration ammunition as it has been doing for months. With a 6-month delay in approving the $60.8 billion package, the Ukrainian army was forced to ration its weapons and ammunition, opening the way for Russia to advance at several points, notably the city of Avdiivka, the gates of city of Donetsk. And according to local sources, Vladimir Putin, aware of the arrival of new weapons and ammunition to Ukraine in the coming days and weeks, reinforced the various offensives he launched during the phase in which Ukrainians were rationing weapons and ammunition, with several reports confirming the increase of the Russian effort at various points on the front line. Putin's objective with this is to try to conquer as much ground as possible until more defensive means arrive in Ukraine. But what exactly is the United States' objective with these billion-dollar aid packages? Does the Pentagon really believe that Ukraine will be able to win the war? Secretary Austin and General Brown, Jr. know as well as any other analyst dedicated to following the conflict, that this aid, however large and impressive it may be, is not enough for Ukraine to win the war. Putin pawned his entire political career and Russia's entire future on that war, which means that for the Russian regime, victory over Ukraine is a genuine matter of life and death, with Putin knowing full well that if he does not achieve all goals set in Ukraine, its political future and the autocratic and authoritarian regime it created in Russia will disintegrate. And it is to avoid this that Putin is throwing everything he has into that war, both in terms of men, with more than 500,000 new soldiers recruited in 2023, and with the forecast of another 300,000 to be recruited in 2024, as well as the material level, with the Russian economy having already been completely militarized, which means that factories that previously produced stoves, refrigerators, microwaves, televisions and computers, today produce artillery designs, armored vehicles, planes and missiles. And in addition to all this gigantic Russian human, economic and industrial effort, we cannot forget the pact signed by Putin with his two great allies, Iran and mainly, North Korea, with the dictator Kim Jong-un, of whom is receiving tons of ammunition, very important resources that are giving the Russian defense industry enough time to adapt to the huge demand in Ukraine. All this effort has turned Russia into one of the most militarized nations in the world, with its society, its economy, and its industry living, breathing and working for Putin's war. Beating a country like Russia on the ground, completely oriented and focused on war, is not easy, if not impossible. But if this is so, why do the United States and NATO insist on supplying billions of dollars in weapons to Ukraine? Returning again to the question in the title of the video, what are they looking for with this? What they want from this is to continue draining Russian resources in an increasingly expensive and exhausting war. A strategy that appears to closely resemble the one followed during the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in the 1980s. when the United States and many other countries sent weapons to the Afghans, turning a war expected to be short into a conflict lasting almost 10 years, whose losses were so great that they actively contributed to accelerating the Soviet collapse. And if we are based on the information coming to us from the battlefield, Russia now, in Ukraine, would be suffering human casualties and bearing greater material and operational costs than it faced in the 1980s in Afghanistan. In the short, medium or long term, no type of Russian collapse is expected, as happened in the Soviet Union in 1991. But it is quite obvious that the strategy followed by the United States and NATO involves the continuation of that conflict for an indefinite period of time. Counting on this, that at some point in the future, it is unknown when something will happen in Russian society to put an end to a war that is tremendously costly and terrible for both sides. Therefore, the United States and NATO are counting on the imponderable, on a hypothetical situation that could occur next month or 10 years from now. Another important objective for the United States and NATO involves keeping Russia concentrated and trapped inside Ukraine. The Pentagon knows that as long as Ukraine is receiving the resources it needs to prevent Russia from advancing and achieving its objectives, Putin will not have sufficient means to put American interests in other regions of the world at risk. With emphasis on Syria, owned by dictator Bashar al-Assad, where Russia has been involved since 2015, and the Pacific, where a possible alliance between the Russians and Chinese could give Beijing the means it so desperately needs to conquer Taiwan and control the entire South China Sea. Therefore, directly answering the title question of the video, the United States knows that, even with many more billions of dollars, Kiev will not be able to inflict heavy enough casualties on Russia to force Putin to leave Ukraine defeated. The most they can do with these billion-dollar packages is to prevent Putin from advancing further, and ensure that for the next few years Russia will be 100% focused and concentrated within that war, losing men, aircraft and armor daily, thus preventing Russia from threatening other US and NATO interests in other parts of the world and paving the way at some point in the future for something to happen inside Russia to put an end to similar war, saved appropriate proportions to the events triggered by the tremendous human and material costs of the invasion of Afghanistan in the 1980s and which led to the Soviet collapse in 1991. Thank you very much for watching the video. And now I invite you press the like button and subscribe to the channel so we'll see you more often and so you'll be up to date with everything that's happening in the world.